And once you see that you are the problem and you are also the solution, there is a radical shift that takes place, and you flip the switch and you start to reframe things and see things in a different light, where all of a sudden the answers start to come instead of always focusing on the problem. But we so often focus on the problems, we define the problems, we refine the problems, we sit on those problems, and we don't spend enough time on the solution. And I believe that I have 3 gold nuggets that sit at the foundation of every problem.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Sparks of Gratitude podcast. I am your host, Randy Sparks, and you know it, gratitude can save and change lives. We're so excited to have an amazing guest today. I've been looking forward to this for quite some time. Jeff Griffin, welcome to the conversation.
Randy, thank you for having me here today. I always say it's easy to look good on the shoulders of giants. So thank you for allowing me to sit on your shoulders today.
Well, that is too kind, but I will take it. Thank you very much for saying that. Some of you may know Jeff, or as he has put it, his mother named him Jeff, but his friends call him Griff. And Jeff has quite a story to tell. I will let him fill in some of the details because it's emotional and inspiring and just wonderful. We're probably going to hit some themes about resilience and dreams, and of course gratitude, and especially gratitude and the hard stuff. So without further ado, let's jump into this thing. I'll tell you a little bit about Jeff, but I'll let him kind of fill in the gaps. Jeff's actually done quite a bit of cool stuff. Jeff's accomplished a lot of things and is on his way to accomplish many, many more things because he's got huge dreams and huge goals. And part of his story is going to help us see the possibility in life. And that's why I think Jeff is so inspiring. So Jeff, could you please maybe explain, and I'm asking you to totally just talk yourself up, tell people some of your accomplishments. I could read them off here, but you've done some pretty cool stuff.
For those who cannot see me, who's just listening, I am in a wheelchair and I speak all over the world. And when I come out on the stage, I address the elephant in the room as fast as I can about how good looking I am.
And it's true.
I'm just kidding. I know that's not true, so I can say that, but I do address the elephant. I am in a wheelchair. That is true. I went from 6'1" to 4'7", and I see things different, both figuratively and literally. And Randy, I've learned that, different isn't always better, but better is always different. And if we want to make things better, we're going to have to think different. And so the doctors gave me a 0% chance of ever walking, ever standing, ever moving my legs again after the accident. The experts gave me a 0% chance of having kids. So it's the first function to go, it's the last to come back. And some of the experts gave me a 0% chance of ever getting married, not because of my wheelchair, but just because of who I am. But, you say to, what are some of the greatest accomplishments you've ever done? And that is my greatest accomplishment, Randy, is that I convinced this beautiful woman to say yes 27 years ago. We just celebrated 27 years. We have 4 beautiful biological kids. And I can now get up out of my chair and take a few steps forward.
Jeff, I have to compliment you and just tell you that it's huge validation for me because I think I've said on this podcast and to other people that I just hit 20 years with my wife a few months ago. And I hold that out, and I've talked to people about that being one of my greatest achievements. Like you said, that I convinced her to marry me, but that we've stuck with it, where we've had our own triumphs and bliss and love and heartbreak and disappointment together. And the achievement of making it this long is just wonderful. And that you said that was one of your achievements. You're the first person I've ever talked to that talked about it as an achievement.
Yeah, it's a huge deal for me. It's been one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life. We moved here to North Ogden, and we live at the base of Mount Ben Lomond. It's 9,711 feet. I went to Kathmandu to do a peer-to-peer leadership program way back when, and the cover of my book, I Am Possible, it has a picture of Mount Everest on there because I just find that story fascinating, that Mount Everest was deemed impossible to climb. Everyone was convinced it's impossible, you can't do it. And there was a group that went early on in the 1900s. They didn't come back, and it just fanned the flames of my list. Dixie is kicking in. Sorry, it fanned the flames of that debate of, yeah, it's impossible, you can't do it. And so it wasn't until 1954, 30 years later, that they finally did it. They finally got to the top. And I'm trying to remember why I brought this up, but one of my greatest accomplishments, yes, some of the hardest things ever is marriage. You know, I wanted to climb Mount Ben Lomond. Somebody like, you should climb Mount Everest, but I'm like, nah, no, thank you. But my wife told me one time, when I told her, I'm like, I really want to climb this mountain, and she's like, Jeff, you don't make sense. I'm like, you want to climb a mountain, but you won't put a cup in the sink. And I'm like, that is not newsworthy. But you guys, I put a cup in the sink, and marriage has been so tough. Climbing that mountain, climbing 9,711 feet, taking every step to the top of the mountain peak was much easier than these last 27 years. And no one ever talks about marriage being so difficult. Maybe it's not. Maybe mine just is. But that roller coaster ride that we've been on, my wife and I, it's been fantastic. It's been amazing. It's been crappy. It's been, you know, as you mentioned, heartbreaking and heart-wrenching. But anyways, it's like, you know, this is something we want to fight for, and not just necessarily fight for, but something that we want to make sure that we have success. Because I really do believe that no success can compensate failure in the home. And so that's my top priority. So we've done some things. We've done some pretty cool things throughout my lifetime. You know, I was able to go to the Athens, Greece in 2004. Played for the Paralympic men's team. Gold. I'm not a gold medalist. Sorry, I am a silver medalist and a bronze medalist. Did not get the gold. I've got four wheelchair NBA MVPs. So we kick off the All-Star events in February and on Thursday, and then the big boys come in on Friday, even though I think the big boys have already played. And so 4-time All-Star MVP, 2-time Guinness World Record holder, and I've written 2 award-winning books, which is a great accomplishment for me because I got a D- in English in 6th grade. My high school English teacher told me I'd never write a comprehensive sentence. All that was validated my freshman year in college. Day 1, we write a paragraph. Day 2, they called 6 of us out of 300, and I was one of the 6. I go bounding back to the auditorium. I'm like, what did I win? And they're like, you won a date with the remedial English teacher. I'm like, what does that mean? They're like, that's why you're going. And so those are just a few things that we've done. And so I'm excited for the next 20 years. I'm excited for the next 5 years. I'm excited for this year. I'm like, 2024, it's not quite over. And we just barely hit the halfway mark. And I'm excited to see what's next and what's coming and what I'm able to accomplish in these short 5 months that we have left of this year.
Well, that kind of leads to the next question of what is getting you inspired right now? What are you inspired about particularly?
Hello, everyone. I want to thank you so much for listening to the Sparks of Gratitude podcast. If you like what you're listening to, will you please hit that like, subscribe to this, and tell us what you like about it in the comments. That'll help us get great guests and keep this thing going. Now back to our interview.
Yeah, that's a great question. And what really inspires me is what I do. Is what I do right now. And I, as I mentioned, I get to speak all over the world. I get to go and inspire people. As I mentioned, I roll out on stage and people can see I'm in a wheelchair. And I've been given a life sentence to never walk, never move, never stand again. And my identity was just stripped from me. My identity of being a collegiate football player, that was my dream as a little kid, was stripped from me. And I had to learn some things and pick up the pieces as I shifted through my shattered dreams and broken back. And you know, I'm physically paralyzed and people can see that. But what I've learned, Randy, is that most of us, if not all of us, are paralyzed from the demons of doubt, fear, and complacency. And those demons and those dragons are keeping most of us from accomplishing our dreams, is keeping most of us from orchestrating and conducting that song that sings inside our soul. That's keeping us from living a life that takes our breath away instead of barely breathing and calling it a life. And so I get the opportunity to inspire people, transform people, give them courage, give them hope, give them faith, and to paint a picture to help them take that step that leads towards their dream, that leads towards that peak that they want to climb? What's their Mount Everest that they need to overcome, and what challenges are they faced with right now, currently, and how can they accomplish it? Because, Randy, I've learned that the problem isn't the problem, because we all have problems. You have problems, I have problems. Your listeners have problems. We all have problems. The problem isn't the problem, because we all have them. The problem is you. And I like letting that sit for a while, because if people could come through the radio right now or their listening device or whatever it is, they want to choke me. They're like, no, you're the problem. I'm not the problem. You're the problem. Don't tell me I'm the problem. But the thing is the problem isn't the problem. The problem is you. But the good news is the solution is you too. And once you take responsibility, and once you take accountability, and once you see that you are the problem and you are also the solution, there is a radical shift that takes place, and you flip the switch and you start to reframe things and see things in a different light, where all of a sudden the answers start to come instead of always focusing on the problem. And I like to say that every problem under the sun has a solution, or it has none. If there be one, hurry and find it. If there be none, never mind it. But we so often focus on the problems. We define the problems. We refine the problems. We just, we sit on those problems, and we don't spend enough time on the solution. And I believe that I have 3 gold nuggets that sit at the foundation of every problem that allows us to solve these problems and I like to call them, Superman solutions. Discover those Superman solutions that are just right there, waiting for us to hold on to and to start to utilize and use.
Well, I'd love to learn about those gold nuggets and that gold that is concealed in these problems that we have if we reach out and grab it, and how you came to realize that you were the problem. When was that? Was there a moment where you had that epiphany yourself, or how did you learn that?
Yeah, it's a great question. I was raised by a wonderful mother. I just admire her. She went to school and she was an English teacher, and she put my dad through college. She got a PhD, put husband through, degree or whatever it was that they called back then. And she taught English for several years until she had her first child, and she wanted to stay home and raise her kids. And she ended up having 8. I was the 5th of 8. My mother was born between the Great Depression and World War II, and she learned her life lessons knee deep in cow poop. She grew up on a farm in northern Utah, and she's learned her life lessons on the farm. And I remember I was about the same age that she was, around 10, when I went into her office, and on her computer was a sticky note, top left corner of her computer. And on the computer was this saying that has stuck with me my whole life. And on that sticky note, it says, problems are like manure. They sure do stink, but they certainly help things to grow. And I'm like, I was probably going in there to complain and try to get out of chores. But I remember seeing that message, and I'm like, I got to simplify it. And so I turned it, interpreted it and turned it into my own saying, which is turn your crap into a crop. Because we all know that a crop on a farm, if crap is spread all across the field, is going to yield a greater harvest. And these challenges and these problems and these trials that we have are like manure. They certainly stink, but they certainly help things to grow. And so I was raised by a wonderful mother who taught me these lessons, but as anyone else, it takes me some time to have it, internalize and to do some things. And I learned some things along the way that helped me chase down my dreams. And then there was a moment in between seasons. One of my dreams was to play college. My greatest dream, the song that sings inside my soul, was to play football in college. It just sang to me, and I loved it. I carried a football with me everywhere I went. I played it in the springtime, played it in the summertime. On Sundays when my mom wouldn't let me play it outside, I'd go down into the basement and lay on my back and throw the ball as close to the ceiling as I could. And I would dream about making catch after catch after catch and the next All-American quarterback from BYU. I grew up in Cache Valley, where they breed him to hate him down there. But that was my dream. I wanted to go play at BYU. I wanted to play on the big stage. And I remember telling somebody my dream, and I was shocked at the response that I got. And the response I got was laughter. They laughed at me. And they told me all the reasons why I couldn't. They're like, Griff, you can't play football in college. You're too short. You can't play football in college because you're too slow. Some people even told me that I couldn't play football in college because I was too white. And one of my youth haters out there reminded me that everyone at BYU was short, slow, and white. I'm like, don't be a hater. But I'm like, fortunately for me, I didn't realize that we as human beings, we base other people's possibilities on our limitations, or other people base our possibilities on their limitations. And so if we go to other people to ask them what we think about what we're capable of doing, we as human beings, we reject what we don't understand, and we base our possibilities on what we know. And if we've never done anything before, then it's like we don't know. And so my mom taught me some of these great life lessons that helped me get to that point where I'm like, you know what? I didn't understand it as a young man, but I do now, like I do now. There's some things that I understand that are predictable, repeatable, and duplicatable. And we can get people on top of their mountains, and we can help people get out of their chairs. And it took me a journey to figure it out. It took me my accidents to figure this out. And I continue to chase down my dream because it sings so loud. And I understand that most of your listeners, their dream isn't to play football. But I do know that everyone has a dream. Everyone has a song inside them, and the world needs to hear that music. So whatever your dream is, whatever that song is that's inside your soul, let it out. Let people listen to it. The whole world's not going to want to listen to your song, but that's okay. But the world needs you. And so, I share this with you to answer your question, like, how did I discover this, that it was me, that I am the problem and I am the solution. And the way I learned that was chasing after my dreams and holding on to it and grasping onto it and receiving an opportunity to go play at BYU. My senior year in high school, I come home from practice and there's a letter on the table from the school that I wanted to go to. And I'm like, what? Because everyone had told me, you can't do this, you can't do that. And that word I can't is poisonous, it's debilitating. It is limiting. So eliminate that word from your vocabulary. I can't. And if you're going to say I can't yet, perfect. Or if I can't, unless, it's impossible unless, you add that word unless. And I'm telling you right now, it is impossible. And you can't if you continue to be the victim, if you continue to think that the problem lies outside, that lies somewhere else. And so, I come home from practice and there's an envelope on the table, and just make sure I wasn't dreaming, because I was told my whole life, you can't do this, you can't do that. And I touched the embossed helmet. I open up the envelope, I pull out the envelope, and there was a letter addressed from the legendary Hall of Fame coach, Lavelle Edwards, inviting me, the short, slow, white guy, to come play at BYU for him. And I tasted the sweetness of success, experienced what it would be like to be on the field, to be on the big stage, not just in the stands, not just on the sideline, but to be in and on the field, in the game and on the field. And as successful leaders and leaders of success, we have to learn how to not just get people to the stadiums, but out of the stands and onto the sidelines, and put a jersey on their backs and get them into the game called life. Because once you start to play life, oh my goodness, it starts to open up, and you start to experience things in a different light. You get to hear things, see things, taste things, smell things, experience things that you've never done before. And the only way to do that is to live your purpose, to live your passion, to live your dreams. And that's what most people don't know what to do. They don't know how to, develop their dreams or accomplish their dreams, because they don't know what they want. And fortunately for me, I knew what I wanted, and I got to taste the sweetness of success. But in between seasons, I found myself next to an unpainted barn. I had just fallen 40 feet from some scaffolding in Napoleon Dynamite country there in Preston, Idaho. And I had just fallen 40 feet. The scaffolding ladder that I had set up slipped out from underneath me, and I stuck the landing straight-legged. Legs came up, back came down, and my L1 vertebrae exploded inside me, leaving me paralyzed from the waist down. And there I was on my back. My dreams of playing football shattered. My dreams of riding a motorcycle with a lady on back, done. And it was more than I thought I could handle. And because my identity of playing football was just stripped away from me, I went into a tailspin. I entered that sauna of self-pity, as I call it, in mile marker 6, I think it is, chapter 6 of my book. And oh boy, it was an ugly place. It was a dark place. It was a oppressive place. And, I was walling around in that syrupy, sticky sauna of self-pity. And I was inviting anybody who would listen to come in and join me. And it wasn't until a few weeks after my surgery where they stopped feeding me in bed. And they're like, you can eat if you go to the cafeteria. So I got out of my bed. It took me half an hour to get out of my bed with the aid of 2 nurses. I was rolling down the sterile halls of the hospital. Got to the cafeteria. You know how you're feeling bad and feeling down? You want to be left alone? That's the worst thing to do. Worst thing to do. But we want to be left alone. That's the worst thing we can do, is to leave other people alone in these moments. But I wanted to. I got my food, went to the corner of the cafeteria. I wanted to be left alone. I was flavoring my food with my tears. And then this tray just plops in front of me. And I remember like it was yesterday. And I looked up at this guy and I was about to tell him to go take a hike. Before I could say anything, he asked a question that set me free from my prison. And that snapped me out of my pity party, that helped me start to focus on things that I could do instead of what I couldn't do, to turn my mess into my message, and to, take my crap and turn it into a crop, and to really just flip that switch and reframe things. And what was interesting is it took this individual across from the table that asked me a question that set me free from my prison. And Randy, here's the irony. The person across the table from me was a prisoner from the point of the mountain who was doing rehab in the hospital. And so this prisoner asks me a question that set me free from my prison. This person that we deem as like somebody who cannot contribute to society, someone who is like the least of, society and all these things. And I'm like, wow, that was a hinge point in my life. And I have never looked back, and I have never gone back to that sauna of self-pity. And it has just set me free, and has allowed me to fly and to experience life. And it's like, let's go. And so it's been 30 years since that experience has happened. And I just get to live life. I do it from a wheelchair, and I get to experience life that takes my breath away. And so I just love the fact that I get an opportunity to go out there and give some people some pointers, some gold nuggets, some flecks of gold that will set them free from their prison, that will give them the tools that are repeatable, predictable, and proven to help them weave that dream that's going to, hang on somebody else's social media wall. It's going to, help them conduct and orchestrate that song that other people are going to listen to. And it's just beautiful. But yeah, that prisoner was the hinge point in my journey.
Yeah, Jeff, I love how the poetic irony and inspiration in that this prisoner set you free from your own prison. And by asking you the question, what was it? What are you crying about?
Yeah, I think I told you over the phone. I don't even remember telling you. I think I tell you so many times. But yeah, he was lifting weights. He had an aneurysm there in the prison, paralyzed the right side of his body, and it caused him to slur his speech. And so when he asked me the question, all I heard was, "Right, hi, dude." And I'm like, "What?" He's like, "Right, hi, dude." And in his slurred speech, I recognized the question that he asked me. And the question he asked me was, "Why are you crying, dude?" And just instantly, bam, it just snapped me out of my pity party. It was like a big anvil just smacking me in the face. It was like, and I looked down the table. And down the table was a man who had been paralyzed from the neck down. He had a halo screwed to his skull. He couldn't move or use any of his limbs or digits. He was 100% dependent on everyone else. And there was a guy next to him who was paralyzed from the neck down, but he could move his arms. So they taped a fork to his finger and thumb, and I'm like watching him struggle as he's trying to feed himself and get some food in his fork and get it up to his mouth, and the morsels had fallen off his fork, and he's struggling. And I'm looking around like, holy crap! Why are you crying, dude? Why are you crying? You have your arms that you can hug people. You can eat and feed yourself. You can transfer, even though it takes 2 nurses and you 30 minutes to get out of bed, you can still do that. You can push yourself down the sterile halls of the hospital. And so all of a sudden it's just, I'm like, holy crap. I've been focusing this whole time on all the things that I couldn't do instead of all the things that I could do. And then that just changed my perspective. And I'm like, okay, let's go. And so I started to dream new dreams. I started to put in practice and really take these flecks of gold, refine them, define them, and forge them into some gold nuggets that, as I mentioned before, repeatable, predictable, and proven. And it's just amazing to just see how they work across the board, and not just in my own life, but in the lives of those who I've crossed paths with.
Well, I love that, finding flecks of gold in these challenges. And you could be forgiven. You could be forgiven and totally understood for being in this, what did you call it? This sauna of self-pity.
Yeah, this syrupy, sticky sauna of self-pity.
Yeah, but who hasn't felt some type of victimhood where it's affected them out of their own control sometimes, and yet what? It's that is the situation that you're in. And so I had someone on this podcast. He was actually my very first guest because he's the one who first challenged me to implement a gratitude practice in my life. His name is Dr. Paul Jenkins, and he wrote a book called Pathological Positivity. But he, maybe a dozen years ago, challenged myself and my wife to implement a daily gratitude practice in our life. And part of that focus was to find gratitude in the hard stuff, which is why I appreciate you so much for sharing your experience with us. Because for me, that was really hard to say, well, how do I find gratitude in the hard stuff? How do I find gratitude when something is challenging, when I'm injured, when things go the wrong way, when I lose my job, when I fill in the blank, anybody that's listening, when I fall off a ladder and I'm paralyzed from the waist down, when I was a collegiate football player, my dream, how do I find gratitude in that? And so I turn that question to you, as I clearly see that you are finding gratitude and purpose and possibility. How do you do that? And how do you kind of sustain and find new belief in the dreams that you can achieve?
Yeah, 100%. Because I'm sure there's some listeners out there like, yeah. You're just optimistic. Yeah. You have this mindset. Yeah. But I wasn't always that way. I wasn't always this optimistic. I wasn't always this positive. I really do believe that the solution to pollution is dilution. And you've got to, if you want good stuff out, you got to put good stuff in. And a lot of people are like, well, I'm just not optimistic, or I'm just not outgoing, or whatever excuse, fill in the blank. We are so good at excuses, and we love those excuses because we created those excuses. We are the originators of them. Like, we came up with them like, yes, I like that one. That's exactly who I am. And the thing is every single one of us have the ability to flip the switch and reframe things. You just have to practice it. The possibility principle is I talk about the 3 gold nuggets that are at the foundation of every problem, but there's the footings that the foundation sits on. And companies pay me millions, not millions, but thousands of dollars to come teach this principle, which is the possibility principle. And that possibility principle is based off of Ralph Waldo Emerson's statement, where he says that which we persist in doing becomes easier for us to do, period. Reading is reading, writing is writing, arithmetic is arithmetic. Even if you have dyslexia like myself, you can figure out how to overcome these things, but you just have to flip the switch and reframe things. You have to believe that you can flip the switch. You have to believe that you are optimistic. And the thing, people are like, yeah, that's you. Yeah, it's just, I've tried it and it doesn't work. But I'm going to tell you right now, how many times have you experienced it for yourself, Randy, where, how people have phone voices? The phone rings, they pick it up, and it's a completely different person. Like, hello, Griffins. And I'm like, all right. But my favorite is when 2 people are fighting and they're just going after it. I'm not saying I'm talking about myself and my wife, but when 2 people are going after it and the phone rings, and all of a sudden you stop fighting and you pick up the phone and you flip the switch, you're like, hello, how you doing?
Where did that come from?
Right? You know what I'm talking about? Maybe you've never experienced that before, but I have witnessed it myself, and I've done it myself. And then as soon as after a 2-minute conversation, 3-minute conversation, you're being happy and polite, and all of a sudden click, and you just go back at it. I'm like, we have the ability to flip the switch both ways. But what we've done here is we've become accustomed to having the circuit boards flip on us, and we don't go flip them back.
You know what it makes me think, Jeff? It makes me think that I'll kind of frame this in myself, that sometimes I don't want to admit that this is true, but I will. I get to shift the responsibility away from myself when I make those excuses. Now I don't have to take responsibility, because responsibility means I have work, I have accountability, But if I can make an excuse, I am shifting all of that outside of myself to somebody else, to something else, to something outside of myself. And then I say, well, here I am. I'm a victim of circumstance, or I can blame an outside force. And I think sometimes I admit that this is embarrassing to admit it, but maybe somebody else has felt this way too. I think that sometimes I get comfortable in doing that. Yeah. I say, well, here I am, here's my excuse. And I put myself in this box and I say, all right, well, here I'm safe. But if I admit otherwise, if I take that accountability, that means I need to stand up off of that chair. That means I need to walk into that darkness. And that's frightening. Mm-hmm. And this is earlier in this conversation, you talked about, that your disability is obvious and apparent, but my disability is my paralysis of fear. Mm-hmm. Right. And some others may share that. So this is something that you do really well in teaching to people and helping people, is how to overcome those things. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So doubt, fear, and complacency I would say are the three biggest dragons that, we need to slay. We need to address. I still deal with the demons of doubt, fear, and complacency. And I loved how you talked about, I'm familiar with these excuses, and I'm not familiar with the unknown. And we would much rather accept and keep what we're familiar with than to explore the world. We have, the options to go and explore the world is unknown. And so, and so what I've done here is I've discovered that not only is the possibility principle, the footings of the foundation, which, teaches us how to match up our desires and our dreams. And the 3Ds, or the 3 gold nuggets that I share on stage, I just introduced that to everybody, is desire, dream, and do. Those are the 3Ds. And so we start with dream. Like, what is your dream? Because, most people are like, I don't know what I want. And so they're not willing to get off that chair. They're not willing to get up and take that step. They're not willing to put forth the effort because they don't know, they don't have a destination in mind. They don't have a direction. They don't have, this dream inside their heads. And so, the greats out there, Simon Sinek tells you that you got to have a why. Tony Robbins and Dean Graziosi and all these other, speakers out there, like, you got to have a vision, you got to have your dream, but nobody that I know of teaches you how to get it, how to develop it, how to, to find it. And, over these years, we've done that. We know how to go subconscious. We know how to get visceral, and we know how to, I call it dream weaving. And as little as 10 minutes is all it takes to figure that out. But then again, most of the times when we work with people and we start this out, it takes about 90 minutes to 2 hours to really, go visceral, to really get, to go subconscious and to find out what it is that you really want. And sometimes we discover what we want, but what we don't want. And but we both know, you and I, that where our focus goes, our energy flows. So we get what we don't want, we get what we think about. And so people don't realize this. And so they're just constantly like, I don't want to be poor. I don't want to be lonely. I don't want to be out of shape. I don't want to be, all these things that we don't want, because most of us, don't know what we want, but the majority of us know what we don't want. And so what we do here is with this dream weaving activity is we take a few minutes to look at what you don't want, because that's where you go visceral. Most people know exactly what they don't want. No, I don't want that. I don't know if you and your friends ever go like, hey, let's go out to eat. Okay, absolutely. What do you want? I don't care, whatever. Just let's go out to eat. Like, okay, let's go get some Mexican. No, I don't want that. And I thought you said you didn't care. Like, no, I don't. I just don't feel like Mexican right now. I'm like, okay, was there anywhere else you don't want to go? No, just not Mexican. I'm like, okay, what if we get Italian? No, I don't want that either. I'm like, oh my goodness. I don't know if you've experienced that before, but most of us, again, we are so good at identifying what we don't want. And a lot of times we can discover what we want by what we don't want. And so what we do here is we just create this dream bucket list that, is created from a visceral experience. And so we go subconscious. We go subconscious with this dream weaving. And, I've just partnered up with a good friend of mine now from Cambridge University, 18-year senior associate there in Cambridge University, a neuroscientist. And he's discovered on a molecular level 54 DNA strands that are connected that were predisposed, that lights us up, that were predisposed to, They're predisposed motivators that gets us excited. And so I go subconscious, he goes molecular, and we meet at the end where it's just like, it's magic, where it's like, okay, yes, absolutely, we've matched this up. But again, it's going back to, how do you overcome these demons of doubt, fear, and complacency? Well, the first place to start is to know what your dream is, to know what you want. Success that we've been taught that the opposite of success is what?
Failure,
right? We've all been taught the opposite of success is failure, but I've never met anyone who has not failed their way to success. And that's a bunch of
right,
because failure is part of success. And so whenever you're learning something new, give yourself permission to fail, because failures at first are triumphs at last, as long as you just don't quit. And that's really the opposite of success, is to not quit, or to not try, to not even get going. And what's keeping most of us from even doing that is knowing what we want, knowing what our dreams are. So that's where we start. We're like, hey, listen, let's get these dreams crystal clear. Let's find out what sings to your soul. Let's find out what just gets you excited, and to where, you're being drawn to your dreams instead of dragged to your destination or wherever people are taking you there. And so that first step is to know what you want, is to really know what you want. And the possibility principle, which is part of the daily dime, that's a tool that we give people, is the daily dime. 5 minutes in the morning, 5 minutes at night, to really stay focused. Because if you're focused, you can do more in 6 weeks than you can do in 6 months. And what's interesting is the golf pros, if you go and take a look at it, most of their earnings are made in a 6 week period, because they're focused, they're in the zone, they've done that, and maybe you experienced that as well. And so capitalize, you got to capitalize those moments. But another tool that will help you with these demons of doubt, fear, and complacency, as I mentioned before, is the daily dime. And the daily dime will teach you that it's the process and not the promise that helps you progress. So often, we just talk about the promise, the destination, like, hey, here's the promise, if you do this, this, and this, but it's the process that helps us progress. So this possibility principle will teach you about that. It will help you develop this P-squared mindset. It will help you, be comfortable, be uncomfortable. And it's because it's the struggle that we find the strength. And it's in the challenge that we find the resilience. And my favorite thing that really helps us with these demons comes with the possibility principle. And that is, the possibility principle teaches you what hope is. And I love the book from Angela Duckworth, Grit. She talks about how gritty people are hopeful people. And I love her book, but I think that Angela has that upside down. And I believe that hopeful people are gritty people. And to me, hope means the ability to reach out to the future and grab onto your dreams and bring it back to the present, in spite of your past, in spite of your setback, in spite of your challenges, in spite of those hiccups that you have had along the way, in spite of those failures, and to really just be crystal clear on what's going on. And again, that possibility principle teaches you those things that I just mentioned, that it gives you the tools to help you combat those demons of doubt, fear, and complacency. In fact, those people who are listening still, I am going to give you a free gift. And
all right, tell them how to get it.
Don't tell them.
Do tell them.
I'm like, okay, I won't. I'm not going to tell them how to get it. Nope, not at all.
Tell them how to get it. Let's tell them how to get it. I'll put a link, whatever we need.
Put a link in there. And again, I don't need to say that, but if you go to griffinmotivation.com and go to the shop, that's where all my items are, products and whatnot. There's the books that you can get there as well. And if you go to the possibility principle, it's $9.95 right now. And companies pay me thousands of dollars to teach this principle. But most people won't even go to the shop, won't even go download it, and won't even do it. And so I'm like, okay, but those people who do, I'm like, okay, let's go. Let's begin this journey. But if you go there and you put in the coupon code P and the number 2, P2, it'll knock off everything for free. And you will have to put your information in there, but you'll get that possibility principle for free. And while you're there, grab a book or two. You get the I'm Possible, get the Endless Possibilities. You get both books. Shipping is free. And just to throw a little love to everybody, if you put in the coupon code LOVE, LOVE, it will knock off 50% off that purchase. And so anyway, those who have made it this far and are interested in any of those products, and those are just a few of them that that a lot of people like to start with. But in the book I'm Possible, I go into introducing those 3Ds like desire, dream. We dissect what a desire is. We take a look at the anatomy of a dream, and we give some concrete things to do in order to accomplish your dreams. Because like Vince Lombardi said, Randy, man cannot dream himself into character. He must hammer and forge one for himself. And so once you understand the tools, once you understand, how to develop a desire and how to match it up with your dreams, and you start taking these steps, I'm just telling you, life changes. And I'm working with a couple of people right now, and their lives are changing already. And it just lights me up. I love it. I just get so excited.
I love seeing you get excited about that. Thank you for sharing that. I'm going to be one of the first people to go in there and get that. Before this is even published, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to use your coupon codes and get the stuff. And then I'm going to do it. And I encourage everybody else to do that too. Jeff has been so gracious with his time and also in devoting his life to not only help himself and what he's achieved and where his dreams are going, but to inspire other people to do it as well. I mean, isn't that what it's all about? So go check it out. And then Jeff, you just mentioned, I've focused in watching lots of YouTube videos about you and interviews and talking to you in personally, some of your achievements from, paralysis, in a wheelchair to now, climbing stairs, climbing Ben Lomond Peak. And you say you got a swagger when you walk, but I've never seen you speak in person, but I've talked I actually just talked to my nephew today who watched you speak in person. He says, oh my gosh, that guy blew my mind. He had me in tears. I was watching him. He gave this inspiring presentation, and then he just gets up out of his wheelchair and he walks across the stage. And he says there was not a dry eye in the room. And seeing what's possible, seeing what belief and dreams, desire, dreaming, and doing has done for your own life. I'm so impressed with what you've accomplished with your dreams. But you did just share that you're so inspired by the things that you're helping others to do. Could you share some of those with us?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's really where it gets exciting. It works for elementary kids to executives. I used to always joke that I discovered these flecks of gold in practice on some of the harshest critics called teenagers for 17 years. And I realized that as adults are even harsher critics than teenagers, because we adults are just teenagers who haven't figured it out. We've grown up physically, but we haven't mentally, socially, spiritually. And so, we are lacking a lot of those tools that are required to do that. And so, there's one time that I was asked to go and share the 3Ds to this elementary school. And the principal's like, will you do it for the whole school? And so I'm talking about kindergartners to sixth graders. And I'm like, you know what? There is such a huge gap between them. Let's break it up. Let's break it up into 2 times. We'll just shorten it and we'll break it up into 2. We'll go kindergartens to second grade and third grade to sixth grade. And we adapted it to, the younger kids. And then we did it for the older kids. And after we were done, this sixth grader girl comes up to me with tears in her eyes. And she's like, Jeff, thank you so much for sharing what you did. This is the happiest I have felt my entire life. I know it was only 6th grade, but her whole entire life, I'm like, oh. And then, to contrast that with another company, it was a local welding company here in Utah. They were deficient $45 million, in their target. They wanted to get to 80 million. They were introducing a new program, and it was for a welding company. And so they wanted me to come speak in between shifts. So one shift was finishing and one shift was coming in. And I always joked that it was the first time I had a standing ovation the whole speech, because the shift going out wanted to leave. They were in back of the warehouse, just ready to go. And after I was finished, the men from the back came up front, slapped me on my back with tears in their eyes, like, thank you. We needed this. The VP of sales comes up and says, Griff, we needed this. And so this was in August that we did that. And so the end of the year, not only did they hit their 45 million that they were deficient, but they exceeded it by 10 million. And so,
wow.
And the men decided that, yeah, they did have the ability to grasp and not just grasp, but embrace the new program they were trying to introduce. And so, we as individuals, we don't like change and we don't like the unknown. So we resist a lot. And most of the time we resist the mindset. We resist changing our thinking. And I've learned that every minute we doubt it's possible, we give up 60 seconds and find the solution. And so we help these young kids and these older people find a solution. And so, it's like that. I had an opportunity to go to Berlin and speak for YPO's global leadership there in October. And it was it wasn't the 10 year, but it was the anniversary of the reunification there in Berlin, where East and West came together. We tore down the walls and things were, the world changed. And I didn't even know that. I get there, I'm like, why is it so somber here? Like, oh, it's a holiday. I'm like, holidays are supposed to be happy. And I'm like, okay, I understand what holiday you're talking about here. And I had 20 minutes to speak in front of these 150 CEOs all around the world. And after I was done, the organizer who did the events for them, who put the activities together, he reached out to me. He's like, Jeff, you are a mensch. And I'm like, are you swearing at me? I don't know what that means. I don't know what a mensch means, but he's like, you are a mensch. And I'm like, I had to ask people what it meant. And apparently it's like, a man's man. I don't know what it means, but it's a German word for amazing or something like that. And he's like, he's been with YPO for several years. He's like, I've never seen a room full of CEOs so engrossed off their phones and engaged in what you had to say. And he's like, I need to work with you. And so we get to, just go around the world and really just help people overcome their mental paralysis, help people with courage, help people with faith, help people with, optimism and to really, help them impact their world. And not just impact their world, but we help them double their earnings, make more money, and master their mindset. And I think I've just got the best job ever. I'm like, people pay me to do this? And I'm like, yes, I get to work on people one-on-one. I get to have conversations with people like yourself and share some things with your audience. And so again, I'm so blessed. I really am. And I do have to say that it's not me. None of this is me. I always talk about the keystone habits, because we only have so much time in a day. And so I address what I call the holy habits and righteous routines. It's a 252 lifestyle. And there's 5 building blocks that hold up the 4 areas in our lives. And we only have so much time in a day. And so why not focus on the keystone habits? Because if you do that, everything will fall into place or fall out of place. And I've learned that the keystone of the keystone is the great I am. That's what makes the impossible possible. It is my creator. It is my God who makes all this possible. It's not me. It is not me. So I want to be crystal clear that it is not me. And I'm just a reflection of his greatness. And so, I just love that I get to go out and shine my lights. And I know that you haven't asked for this, but, people are like, Griff, how do you want to be remembered? I always talk about the armchair years, you're rocking in your lazy boy. You're like, okay, how do I want to be remembered? And that's another way to really, discover your dreams is to write your obituary. I know it sounds morbid and gross or whatnot, but it's like, if you can get to the end of your life and really be crystal clear on how people remember you, your present life is just going to light up. And so for me, I've done that. I've gone through that and I've discovered, I have these vision statements for different areas in my life. And for my family and friends, I want people to remember Jeff Griffin as a man who lifted their loads, lightened their spirits, and loved them. That's how I want to be remembered.
Well, Jeff, I believe you're living a life to be remembered that way. And I'm grateful that you could share that message with us for a few minutes today. And I'm so grateful that you get to touch so many lives. And it's made a difference in my life. You've made my life lighter. You've shined a light on my life. So thank you very much. I hope we can do this again someday. And until next time, everyone, thank you for joining the Sparks of Gratitude podcast, and we'll see you next time.